Lucas Lancaster didn't notice his mother slip her phone under the table, but he definitely noticed the satisfied smile spreading across her face as she dabbed her lips with the linen napkin. He knew that look. That was the look of a woman who had just orchestrated something she believed would change his life, whether he wanted it changed or not. "What did you do?" he asked, setting down his coffee cup with enough force that the china rattled against the saucer. "I have no idea what you're talking about, darling." Billionaire Lancaster's eyes sparkled with mischief as she reached for another strawberry from the brunch spread at the Harbor Club, one of Manhattan's most exclusive establishments. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River, where sailboats drifted lazily in the late spring sunshine. "Mother." Lucas leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. At 32, he ran one of the most successful luxury hotel chains in the world, overseeing properties on 5 continents. He could negotiate with the toughest business partners, manage thousands of employees, and had turned his father's modest 3-hotel operation into an empire worth billions. But his mother was an entirely different challenge. "Fine." Billionaire set down her fork and met her son's blue eyes with her own. "I may have invited someone to join us for brunch." "You what?" "Don't use that tone with me, Lucas James Lancaster. I raised you better than that." Before Lucas could protest further, a woman approached their table, and he found himself turning to look. She wore a simple cream-colored dress that somehow made her stand out rather than blend in with all the designer labels surrounding them. Her dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and when she smiled uncertainly at his mother, Lucas felt something shift in his chest that he couldn't quite name. "Billionaire," the woman said, her voice warm but hesitant. "Kimberly. Oh, I'm so glad you could make it." Billionaire stood and embraced the newcomer like they were old friends, though Lucas suspected they barely knew each other. That was his mother's gift, making everyone feel like family within minutes of meeting her. "Please, sit down. This is my son, Lucas. Lucas, this is Kimberly Wilson." Kimberly's eyes met his, and Lucas saw the exact moment she realized what was happening. Her cheeks flushed pink, and she looked like she wanted to bolt from the restaurant. That made 2 of them. "I'm so sorry," Kimberly said, taking a step back. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Billionaire, you said you wanted to discuss the gallery benefit, and we will, but first sit, have some food. Lucas was just telling me how lonely he's been lately." Billionaire's smile was innocent, but Lucas knew better. "I said no such thing." "Well, you should have." "When was the last time you went on a proper date?" Billionaire gestured for Kimberly to take the empty chair between them. Lucas watched Kimberly wage an internal battle. She could walk away and make this awkward for everyone, or she could sit down and endure what would undoubtedly be an excruciating meal. To his surprise, she chose the latter, sliding into the chair with a grace that suggested she was used to navigating uncomfortable situations. "I apologize for my mother," Lucas said, pouring water into Kimberly's glass without being asked. "She has boundary issues." "I prefer to think of it as being proactive about my son's happiness," Billionaire countered. Kimberly laughed, and the sound was genuine, not forced. "It's fine. Actually, it's kind of refreshing. My own mother stopped trying to set me up years ago. She said I was too picky." "Are you?" Lucas asked before he could stop himself. Their eyes met again, and this time Kimberly held his gaze. "Maybe, or maybe I just know what I want." "And what's that?" "Lucas, you're supposed to make small talk first," Billionaire interjected. "Ask about her work. Kimberly runs the most wonderful art gallery in Chelsea." "I manage it," Kimberly corrected gently. "I don't own it, though that's the dream someday." "What kind of art?" Lucas found himself genuinely curious, despite his irritation at being ambushed. Kimberly's entire demeanor changed when she talked about her work. Her eyes lit up, and her hands moved expressively as she described the contemporary artists she represented, the challenge of finding new talent, the thrill of matching the right piece with the right collector. Lucas watched her, captivated by her passion. In his world, most people were passionate about money or status. Kimberly talked about art like it was oxygen. "I'm boring you," she said suddenly, cutting herself off mid-sentence. "Not even slightly," Lucas replied and meant it. "Keep going." The brunch stretched from 1 hour to 2, then 3. Eleanor eventually excused herself with a transparent excuse about meeting a friend, leaving Lucas and Kimberly alone at the table. Neither of them moved to leave. "I really am sorry about this," Kimberly said, once Eleanor was gone. "I genuinely thought she wanted to discuss a donation to our gallery's education program. She came to an opening last month and seemed interested. That's her strategy. She identifies targets and finds a way into their lives." Lucas refilled both their coffee cups from the carafe the waiter had left. "Last year she tried to set me up with her yoga instructor, her dentist's daughter, and a woman she met in line at Whole Foods. And none of them worked out. I went on exactly 0 dates with any of them." "I don't appreciate being manipulated." Kimberly tilted her head, studying him. "But you're still sitting here." Lucas considered this. She was right. He could have left the moment his mother did. Should have, really. He had a conference call with his London team in an hour that he needed to prepare for. Instead, he was sitting in a restaurant, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what color Kimberly's eyes were. Brown. No, there were flecks of gold and green in them too. "The coffee's good," he said finally. Kimberly's lips curved into a smile. "Right, the coffee, and the company isn't terrible." "Wow, such high praise. I feel truly special now." Lucas found himself smiling back. "I'm not great at this." "At what?" "Talking to women." "Something tells me you do just fine." "At being honest about what I'm thinking." The words came out before Lucas could second-guess them. There was something about Kimberly that made him want to be direct, to skip past all the games and posturing he was so used to in his business and social circles. "Okay," Kimberly leaned forward slightly. "What are you thinking right now?" "That I want to see you again, without my mother present." "That's a pretty low bar you're setting. Dinner, tomorrow night. Somewhere that serves something other than overpriced Eggs Benedict." Kimberly bit her lip and Lucas found himself staring at her mouth. "I don't even know you. You could be a serial killer for all I know. Google me. Lucas Lancaster. I promise you'll find plenty of information, though I can't vouch for all of it being accurate." He watched recognition dawn on her face. "Oh, you're that Lucas Lancaster, the hotel guy." "The hotel guy, that's definitely going on my business cards." But Lucas felt his stomach tighten. This was usually the moment when everything changed, when people stopped seeing him and started seeing his bank account instead. "The Lancaster Grand in Paris is one of my favorite places on earth," Kimberly said softly. "I spent a week there after college graduation. Saved up for 2 years to afford it. I used to sit in the lobby and sketch the ceiling frescoes." "You're an artist too." "A terrible one, but I appreciate beauty when I see it." She was looking directly at him when she said it, and Lucas felt heat creep up his neck. "So is that a yes to dinner?" Kimberly pulled her phone from her purse. "Give me your number. I'll text you so you have mine." Lucas rattled off his digits, then felt his phone buzz a moment later. He looked down at the message. "This is Kimberly, the woman your mother ambushed. Just so we're clear, I'm saying yes to dinner because I want to, not because your mother set this up. In fact, let's not tell her it's happening." He typed back. "Deal, pick you up at 7, her response came quickly. "I'll meet you there." "I don't give strange hotel billionaires my address on the first date." "Smart. How about Maria? Do you like Italian?" "Who doesn't like Italian?" Lucas pocketed his phone and stood, extending his hand to help Kimberly from her chair. When her palm touched his, he felt that strange sensation again, like something clicking into place that he hadn't known was misaligned. "I should go," Kimberly said, but she didn't immediately pull her hand away. "I have a showing at 3, and I have a call with London." They stood there for a moment, neither moving. Finally, Kimberly stepped back, breaking the contact. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," Lucas confirmed. He watched her walk away, weaving through the tables of Sunday brunchers, and pulled out his phone to call his mother. She answered on the first ring. "Don't even start," Eleanor said before he could speak. "I'm not apologizing. I have a date with her tomorrow." His mother's squeal of delight was loud enough that Lucas had to hold the phone away from his ear. "I knew it. I knew she was perfect for you the moment I met her. There's something genuine about that girl, Lucas. Something real. It's one dinner, Mother. Don't start planning the wedding." "I would never." Eleanor's voice dripped with false innocence. "But just so you know, the Lancaster estate looks absolutely beautiful in the fall. The gardens are perfect that time of year." "Goodbye, Mother. Wear the navy suit tomorrow. It brings out your eyes. And for heaven's sake, don't talk about work the entire time." Lucas hung up, but he was smiling as he made his way out of the restaurant. His driver was waiting at the curb, but Lucas waved him off. "I'm going to walk," he told Martin, who looked at him like he'd suggested growing wings and flying home. "Sir, it's 40 blocks to your apartment." "Then I'd better get started." Lucas walked north along the Hudson River, his hands in his pockets, his mind replaying every moment of the past 3 hours. He'd been on dates before, plenty of them. Beautiful women, intelligent women, women who checked every box on paper. But he'd never felt this flutter of anticipation, this curiosity to learn more, this urge to check his phone every 30 seconds to see if Kimberly had texted again. His phone rang. It was James Mercer, his best friend since college and the chief financial officer of Lancaster Hotels. "How was brunch with your mother?" James asked. "She set me up." "Again? Who was it this time?" "A woman named Kimberly. She manages an art gallery." "Let me guess. You made an excuse and left early." Lucas dodged a jogger and crossed at the next intersection. "I stayed for 3 hours and asked her to dinner tomorrow." The silence on the other end was deafening. "James, you still there?" "I'm sorry, I think I just had a stroke. Did you say you asked her out? Is that so hard to believe?" "Lucas, you once told me you'd rather negotiate a hostile takeover than go on a first date. You said dating was a waste of time better spent reviewing quarterly reports." "I may have been wrong about that. This I have to see. Bring her to the opening next month, the Park Avenue property. I want to meet the woman who's made the great Lucas Lancaster admit he was wrong about something." "It's one dinner. Don't make it a thing." "Too late. It's already a thing." James laughed. "Good luck tomorrow, man. Try not to talk about occupancy rates." Lucas made it home in record time, took a shower, and actually made it to his video call on time. But throughout the entire meeting, as he discussed renovation plans for the London property and reviewed the expansion proposal for the Tokyo location, part of his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about gold-flecked eyes and the way Kimberly's laugh had sounded like music. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Lucas went to the office, sat through meetings, reviewed contracts, and approved designs for the new Miami property. But he kept checking his watch, willing the hours to pass faster. At 6 o'clock he left work, ignoring the surprised looks from his staff. Lucas Lancaster never left before 8. He went home and stood in front of his closet for an embarrassingly long time before selecting the navy suit his mother had recommended. He hated that she was right, but it did look good. He paired it with a light blue shirt, no tie. Too formal felt wrong for this. At exactly 7 o'clock, Lucas walked into Maria and spotted Kimberly immediately. She was already seated, wearing a dark green dress that made her eyes look more green than brown. She'd done something different with her hair, pulled it back on one side with a small clip that sparkled when she moved her head. "Hi," he said, suddenly feeling like a teenager on his first date. "Hi." Kimberly smiled up at him. "The Navy was the right choice, my mother's idea." "Well, don't tell her I agreed with her. That feels like admitting defeat." Lucas sat down across from her, and a waiter appeared immediately with menus and the wine list. They ordered a bottle of Barolo and spent the next several minutes debating appetizers. "Okay, serious question," Kimberly said once the waiter had departed with their order. "What's the worst hotel you've ever stayed in?" Lucas blinked. "That's not what I expected you to ask. Everyone wants to know about the fancy properties. I want to know about the disasters. The places that made you appreciate good hotels." So Lucas told her about a backpacking trip he'd taken through Southeast Asia right after college, before he joined his father's company. He described a hostel in Bangkok where the shower was in the same room as the toilet, separated by nothing more than a drain in the floor. A place in Vietnam where he'd shared a room with 7 other people, and someone's alarm had gone off at 4 in the morning every single day. A beach hut in Thailand that looked romantic in the pictures, but turned out to be infested with enormous spiders. Kimberly laughed so hard that tears streamed down her face. "And that's what inspired you to get into the hotel business?" "Actually, yes. I realized that travel should be about the experience, not about suffering through terrible accommodations. Everyone deserves a place that feels like sanctuary, whether they're paying $50 a night or $5,000. You have any $50 a night properties?" "Not yet. But I'm working on it." Lucas leaned forward. "I've been developing a concept for the past year. Mid-range hotels in interesting locations. Places that are beautifully designed and comfortable but accessible to people who aren't millionaires. My board thinks I'm crazy. Are you? Probably. The profit margins would be much smaller, but I didn't get into this business just to make rich people richer. I want to create experiences." Kimberly's expression had turned serious. "That's beautiful. Really. Most people in your position wouldn't even think that way. What about you? How did you end up running an art gallery?" Kimberly took a sip of wine, considering her answer. "I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where art was something you did in school before they cut the program due to budget issues. But my grandmother loved to paint. Nothing fancy, just watercolors of flowers and landscapes. She died when I was 12 and left me her supplies. I started painting, then drawing, then I became obsessed with understanding why some art moves people and some doesn't. And managing a gallery lets you answer that question. Every single day, I get to watch people connect with art, see their faces change when they find a piece that speaks to them. I've seen tough businessmen cry over paintings, watched skeptical teenagers become fascinated by sculptures. Art has this power to crack people open, you know. Make them feel things they've been avoiding. Have you ever cried over art?" "Yes. The first time I saw a Rothko in person, I stood there and sobbed. The museum guard thought something was wrong with me." Kimberly laughed at the memory. "There's something about those huge fields of color. They get inside you somehow." Their entrees arrived and they ate slowly, continuing to talk. Lucas asked about her favorite artists. Kimberly wanted to know about the most interesting places he'd traveled. They argued good-naturedly about whether New York or Paris had better museums. Lucas insisted Paris, while Kimberly defended New York with passion. "You only say Paris because you own a hotel there," she accused, pointing her fork at him. "I own hotels in a lot of places. That doesn't make all of them better than New York." Name one thing the Louvre has that the Met doesn't. Better lighting. Kimberly threw her napkin at him. Lucas caught it, grinning, and felt something warm spread through his chest. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had this much fun on a date. Usually, first dates were performances where everyone tried to show their best side while hiding their flaws. This felt different, real. "Tell me something true," Lucas said suddenly. "What do you mean, something real?" "Not the version of yourself you show the world, something true." Kimberly set down her wine glass and met his eyes. "I'm terrified I'm wasting my time managing someone else's gallery instead of taking the risk to open my own. I've been saving money for years, but every time I get close to having enough, I find a reason to talk myself out of it. Too risky. Bad timing, not ready. The truth is I'm scared of failing." Lucas felt the weight of her honesty. "Thank you for telling me that. Your turn. Something true." He thought about deflecting, keeping things light, but Kimberly had been brave enough to be vulnerable. He could do the same. "I'm lonely," Lucas said. "I have everything I'm supposed to want. Success, money, respect in my industry. But most days I feel completely alone. I work 80-hour weeks because it's easier than going home to an empty apartment. My mother sets me up on dates because she can see that I'm slowly disappearing into my work. And until yesterday, I was fine with that. I'd convinced myself it was enough. And now I'm sitting here with you, and I don't want this dinner to end." Kimberly reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm. "It doesn't have to end." They skipped dessert at the restaurant and walked instead, wandering through Central Park as the sun set and the city lights began to twinkle around them. Lucas told Kimberly about his father, who died when Lucas was 28, leaving him the company and a legacy to uphold. Kimberly described her mother, a nurse who'd raised 3 kids alone after Kimberly's father left when she was 6. "She's my hero," Kimberly said. "I don't know how she did it. Working double shifts, never missing a school play or parent-teacher conference. She made us feel like we had everything even when we had nothing." "Does she know you're in New York?" "Oh, she knows. She calls me every Sunday and asks when I'm going to move home and settle down with a nice local boy." Kimberly's impression of her mother's voice was spot on, and Lucas laughed. "She doesn't understand why I'd want to live in a tiny apartment that costs more per month than her mortgage when I could have a house in Ohio." "Why do you?" "Because New York is magic. It's where impossible things happen every day. I love that you can walk down any street and hear 15 different languages. I love that you can get any kind of food at 3 in the morning. I love the energy, the chaos, the constant possibility of something amazing around every corner." They ended up at Belvedere Castle, looking out over the park as darkness settled around them. Lucas stood behind Kimberly, close enough to feel her warmth but not quite touching. "I had a good time tonight," he said. Kimberly turned to face him. "Me too. Can I see you again? You better." Lucas reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, letting his fingers linger on her cheek. "What are you doing Thursday?" Probably saying yes to whatever you're about to suggest. "There's a restaurant opening in Brooklyn. The chef is someone I met in Tokyo. He's brilliant. Would you want to go?" "I would love that." They stood there, and Lucas knew he should kiss her. Everything about the moment was perfect, but something held him back, some instinct that told him to wait, to not rush this. Instead, he took her hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Let me get you a car home. I can take the subway, Kimberly." "Fine, but I'm not letting you send your driver, that's too much." Lucas compromised by calling a car service, waiting with her until it arrived. Before she got in, Kimberly stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for tonight," she whispered. Then she was gone, and Lucas was left standing on the sidewalk, touching his cheek where her lips had been, feeling like a complete idiot and not caring at all. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Lucas found himself distracted during meetings, checking his phone constantly for text from Kimberly. They'd been messaging back and forth. Nothing important, just the small observations people share when they're starting to weave each other into their daily lives. She sent him a photo of a painting that had arrived at the gallery. He sent her a picture of the sunset from his office window. The restaurant in Brooklyn exceeded expectations. The chef, Takeshi, came out to greet them personally, and he and Lucas spent 20 minutes speaking in Japanese while Kimberly watched with amusement. "You didn't tell me you spoke Japanese," she said after Takeshi had returned to the kitchen. "You didn't ask. I also speak French and passable Italian." "Of course you do. What else are you hiding? I'll tell you one secret per date. That way you have to keep seeing me." "That's assuming your secrets are interesting enough to warrant multiple dates." Lucas leaned across the table. "I'm full of surprises, Kimberly Wilson. Prove it." So he did. Over the next few weeks, Lucas showed Kimberly parts of himself he usually kept hidden. He took her to a jazz club in the village where he sometimes played piano during open mic nights. She'd stared at him in amazement as his fingers moved across the keys, playing a complicated Coltrane piece from memory. "My mother made me take lessons for 12 years, he explained. "I hated it until I was 16. Then suddenly it made sense. Now it's how I think." Kimberly took him to her gallery for a private viewing after hours. They walked through the space, and she explained each piece, what drew her to it, what the artist was trying to express. Lucas found himself not really looking at the art but watching Kimberly instead, captivated by her passion and insight. "You should open your own place," he said. "You're wasted managing for someone else." "Easy for you to say. You had a trust fund and family connections." "I also had a father who made me work every job in his hotels before he'd let me touch the business side. I cleaned toilets, scrubbed floors, worked the front desk, hauled luggage. He wanted me to understand every aspect of the operation." "That's actually pretty smart." It was humiliating at the time. All my college friends were backpacking through Europe or doing internships at fancy companies. I was wearing a uniform and taking orders from housekeeping managers who'd been with the company for 20 years. But it made you better at what you do. "Yeah." It did. They had dinner at hole-in-the-wall restaurants and 5-star establishments, walked through every neighborhood in Manhattan and half of Brooklyn, went to the movies and argued about the ending, cooked dinner in Lucas's apartment while drinking too much wine and burning the pasta, spent an entire Sunday in bed reading the Times and eating bagels and stealing kisses between articles. It was during one of these lazy mornings, about 6 weeks after that first brunch, when Lucas realized he was in love with her. They were lying in his bed, Kimberly reading the arts section while Lucas reviewed something on his tablet. She'd stolen one of his T-shirts to sleep in, and her hair was a mess, and she had a smudge of cream cheese on her chin from breakfast. She was perfect. "What?" Kimberly asked, looking up and catching him staring. "Nothing, Lucas. I'm happy. That's all." Kimberly set down the newspaper and crawled over to him, straddling his lap. "Me too." He kissed her then, slow and deep, his hands sliding under the T-shirt to trace patterns on her bare back. Every time they kissed, Lucas felt like he was learning a new language, one made of sighs and touches and the perfect way their bodies fit together. They hadn't slept together yet, though it was getting harder to stop. Lucas didn't want to rush things. This felt too important, too precious to treat casually. "I should probably go home," Kimberly murmured against his lips. "I have that collector coming in at noon." "Stay. You're very distracting, Mr. Lancaster." "Is that a complaint?" "Definitely not." She did leave eventually, and Lucas spent the rest of the day counting the hours until he'd see her again. They had plans for dinner, but James called and asked Lucas to meet him for drinks first. "I need advice," James said when they met at their usual bar near the office. "The London property is having issues with the contractors. They're 3 weeks behind and demanding more money." Lucas listened to the problem and offered suggestions, but his mind kept drifting. He checked his phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "You've got it bad," James observed. "What?" "Kimberly. You're completely gone for her." Lucas didn't bother denying it. "She's different, James. She doesn't care about the money or the status. She argues with me about art and makes me laugh and calls me out when I'm being an idiot." "Have you told her how you feel?" "Not exactly." "What are you waiting for?" "The right moment, I guess. I don't want to scare her off." James shook his head. "Man, you negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. But telling a woman you love her terrifies you. This is different. Business, I understand. This is—" Lucas trailed off, unable to find the right words. "More important?" "Yeah." "Then tell her. Life's too short for cowardice." Lucas thought about James's words all through dinner with Kimberly. They went to a Thai place in Hell's Kitchen, squeezed into a tiny table in the back. Kimberly had sauce on her chin again, and Lucas leaned over to wipe it off with his napkin. "I'm a mess," she laughed. "You're perfect." Something in his tone made her pause. "Lucas, I need to tell you something." His heart was hammering against his ribs. "I'm in love with you." "I know it's only been a few weeks, and maybe it's too soon to say that, but it's true. I'm completely in love with you, and I needed you to know." Kimberly stared at him, her eyes wide. For a terrible moment, Lucas thought he'd made a mistake, said too much too soon. Then she smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Thank God," she said. "I've been holding that in for 2 weeks. I love you too." Lucas felt relief and joy wash over him in equal measure. Yeah, I'm crazy about you. It's honestly a little inconvenient because I can't focus on work anymore. I just keep thinking about you and that stupid smile you get when you're trying not to laugh at something." "I don't have a stupid smile." "You absolutely do. It's adorable." Lucas paid the check, and they practically ran back to his apartment, kissing in the elevator, stumbling through the door. This time, when things heated up, neither of them pulled away. They made their way to the bedroom, shedding clothes along the way, and Lucas finally got to explore every inch of her. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathless and grinning like idiots. "That was worth the wait," Kimberly said, tracing patterns on his chest. "Agreed." "Though I vote we don't wait that long again," seconded. Lucas pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Stay, don't go home tonight." "Okay." It was such a small word, but it felt momentous. The beginning of something bigger than either of them had planned. Over the next several months, they fell into a rhythm. Kimberly stayed at Lucas's apartment more often than not, though she kept her place in Brooklyn. Lucas made time for dinner most nights, shocking his staff by leaving the office at reasonable hours. They traveled together when they could, quick weekend trips to Boston or D.C. A long weekend in Miami, where Lucas showed her the new property under construction. He met her mother when Mrs. Wilson came to visit for Thanksgiving. Lucas had been nervous, but Kimberly's mom hugged him within 5 minutes of meeting him and spent the entire weekend showing him embarrassing photos of Kimberly as a child. "I like him," Mrs. Wilson told her daughter loud enough for Lucas to hear. "He's got kind eyes. And he looks at you like you hung the moon." Kimberly met Lucas's mother for an actual planned dinner this time, not an ambush. Eleanor had been insufferably smug. "I told you she was perfect," she whispered to Lucas while Kimberly was in the restroom. "You were right. But I'm never admitting that publicly." "I'll take it." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "She makes you happy, sweetheart. That's all I ever wanted." The holidays came and went in a blur of happiness. Lucas surprised Kimberly with a trip to Paris for Christmas, showing her the Lancaster Grand from an insider's perspective. They had breakfast in bed, took long walks along the Seine, and spent hours in the Louvre arguing about paintings. On New Year's Eve, they watched fireworks from the Eiffel Tower, bundled in coats and scarves, Kimberly tucked against Lucas's chest. "I have something for you," Lucas said as the last firework faded. He pulled a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. Kimberly opened it, confused, then gasped as she realized what she was looking at. "Lucas, this is the deed to a property in Chelsea, about 3 blocks from your current gallery. I bought it 6 weeks ago. The space needs renovation, but the bones are good. High ceilings, great light, good foot traffic. I can't accept this." "You're not accepting it. I'm investing in it. You're going to open your own gallery, Kimberly. I'll be a silent partner. You'll run everything, make all the decisions, but I want to help make your dream happen." Tears streamed down Kimberly's face. "This is too much. It's not enough. You deserve this. You deserve everything." Lucas cupped her face in his hands. "Let me help you, please." Kimberly kissed him, tasting like tears and champagne and possibility. "Okay, yes, thank you." The next 6 months were chaotic in the best way. Kimberly threw herself into planning the gallery while still managing her old job. Lucas helped when he could, using his connections to find contractors and designers. They had late-night planning sessions that turned into early morning ones, fueled by coffee and Chinese takeout and the electric energy of building something together. The gallery opened on a perfect spring evening, almost exactly a year after that first setup brunch. Lucas stood in the back, watching Kimberly greet collectors and artists, seeing her dream come to life. She wore a red dress that made heads turn, and she glowed with confidence and joy. "You did good," James said, appearing beside Lucas with 2 glasses of champagne. "She did it. I just helped." "Don't be modest. It's not a good look on you." Eleanor found Lucas an hour later. "Have you asked her yet?" "Asked her what?" "Lucas James Lancaster, don't play dumb with me. The ring has been burning a hole in your pocket for 3 months. How did you?" "I'm your mother. I know everything." Eleanor kissed his cheek. "Tonight would be perfect, you know. Surrounded by beauty she created, all the people she loves here to celebrate with her." Lucas looked at Kimberly across the room. She caught his eye and smiled, that special smile she saved just for him. His mother was right. It was perfect. He made his way through the crowd to Kimberly's side, took her hand, and led her to the center of the gallery. People noticed and grew quiet, a hush falling over the space. "I wasn't planning to do this here," Lucas began, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "I had something more private in mind, but my mother reminded me that the best moments are the ones shared with people you love." He dropped to one knee, and Kimberly's free hand flew to her mouth. "Kimberly Wilson, you walked into my life because my mother's a meddling matchmaker and I fought it every step of the way. I was convinced I didn't need anyone, that I was fine alone. But you changed everything. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me, the real me, not the billionaire or the CEO, just me. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Will you marry me?" The ring was a vintage emerald surrounded by diamonds, the green stone the exact color of her eyes in certain light. Lucas had spent weeks finding the perfect one. Kimberly was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." The gallery erupted in applause as Lucas slid the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Over Kimberly's shoulder he saw his mother dabbing at her eyes, looking triumphant. "Your mother knew, didn't she?" Kimberly whispered. "She's known since before I did. I'm going to have to thank her, again." "Don't. Her ego can't handle any more inflation." They were married 6 months later in the gardens of the Lancaster estate, just as Billionaire had predicted. It was a perfect fall day, the trees blazing with color, the air crisp and clean. Kimberly wore a simple dress that made her look like something from a dream, and Lucas couldn't stop smiling. His best man speech, James teased Lucas mercilessly. I've known Lucas for 15 years, and I've never seen him as happy as he's been this past year and a half. He used to be all business all the time. Now he leaves work at 6. He takes weekends off. He smiles at his phone during meetings. Kimberly, you've turned him into an actual human being, and we're all grateful. Kimberly's maid of honor, her younger sister Kelly, told embarrassing stories from their childhood and then turned serious. Kim has always been the strongest person I know. She left home at 18 with nothing but a dream and enough stubbornness to make it real. She built a life here through sheer determination. But she did it alone for so long. I'm so happy she found someone who sees her strength, but also lets her be soft. Lucas, thank you for loving my sister the way she deserves. They danced until their feet hurt, ate too much cake, and snuck away from their own reception to steal a private moment in the garden. Hello, Mrs. Lancaster, Lucas said, pulling Kimberly close. I'm keeping Wilson professionally. But I like the sound of that anyway. Any regrets? About marrying a man I met because his mother set us up at brunch? Not a single one. Even though I talk about occupancy rates too much, even though we are working on that. Kimberly kissed him softly. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to stay that first day. For taking a chance on this, on us. Best decision I ever made. They moved through the first year of marriage with the same ease they'd had while dating. Kimberly's gallery thrived, representing emerging artists who went on to make names for themselves. Lucas finally launched his mid-range hotel concept, starting with 3 properties that exceeded all projections. They bought a house in Connecticut for weekends, a rambling old place with room to grow. It was in that house, on a sunny Saturday morning 2 years after their wedding, that Kimberly told Lucas she was pregnant. "You're sure?" he asked, his hand going immediately to her still flat stomach. 3 tests sure. I have a doctor's appointment Monday to confirm, but yeah, we're having a baby. Lucas kissed her, joy flooding through him. I love you so much, love you too. Even if you're going to be insufferably overprotective for the next 9 months. I'm not going to be overprotective. Kimberly raised an eyebrow. Okay, I'm going to be a little overprotective. Their daughter, Billionaire Lancaster, was born on a snowy January morning. She had Kimberly's eyes and Lucas's dark hair and lungs that could wake the entire maternity ward. Lucas held her for the first time and felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. Billionaire was, predictably, over the moon. She showed up at the hospital with enough flowers to open a shop and tears streaming down her face. She's perfect, Billionaire whispered, looking at her granddaughter. Absolutely perfect. Just like her grandmother's matchmaking skills, Kimberly said sleepily from the bed. You're never going to let me forget that, are you? Not a chance. You literally changed my entire life at brunch. It was just a feeling I had. When I met you at that gallery opening, I knew. I just knew you were the one for Lucas. Lucas watched his mother hold his daughter, Kimberly resting against his side, and thought about that day nearly 4 years ago. He'd walked into that brunch so irritated, so convinced his mother was meddling where she didn't belong. He'd had no idea his whole life was about to change. 2 years later, Lucas stood in the kitchen of their Connecticut house, making pancakes while Lily sat in her high chair, babbling happily and throwing pieces of banana on the floor. Kimberly walked in, laughing at the chaos. You're terrible at feeding her without making a mess. She's terrible at keeping food in her mouth. I think she does it on purpose. Kimberly kissed him and stole a piece of pancake from the pan. "Your mother called. She wants to have brunch tomorrow." "Of course she does." She also casually mentioned that she met a wonderful woman at her book club who she thinks would be perfect for James. Lucas groaned. "Should we warn him?" "Absolutely not. He deserves to be ambushed the way you were. You're evil. You love it." Lucas pulled her close, mindful of the spatula in his hand. "I love you. There's a difference." Lily squealed and threw another piece of banana, hitting Lucas in the back. Kimberly laughed so hard she had to sit down. Lucas looked at his wife, his daughter, the life they'd built together, and felt overwhelmingly grateful. "What are you thinking?" Kimberly asked, the same question she'd posed on their first date. "That your mother was right. I was too picky. But then I met the perfect woman at brunch and everything changed." "Your mother was right, technically. Don't tell her that. We'll never hear the end of it." But when they went to brunch the next day at Alina's favorite restaurant, the same place where it had all started, Lucas pulled his mother aside. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for meddling, for being pushy, for knowing what I needed before I did." Alina's eyes filled with tears. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We see our children's hearts even when they're trying to hide them." "I wasn't trying to hide anything. I just didn't know I was missing something until I found it. And now I have everything." At the table, Kimberly was laughing at something the waiter said, Lily bouncing on her lap. She caught Lucas's eye and smiled, that same smile that had captured him 4 years ago and hadn't let go since. Lucas thought about all the twists and turns that had led him here. His father's death that had thrust him into running the company. The years of work that had left him lonely and disconnected. His mother's determination to see him happy. A random gallery opening where Alina had met a woman and decided she was perfect for her son. It was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect, just like love was supposed to be. "Come eat," Kimberly called. "Your pancakes are getting cold." Lucas sat down beside his family, took his wife's hand, and said a silent thank you to whatever force had brought them together. Even if that force was his meddling. Wonderful, impossible to say no to mother. 3 years later they had a son, Mason James Lancaster, who was quieter than his sister but just as loved. Kimberly opened a second gallery location. Lucas's mid-range hotel concept expanded to 15 cities. They traveled as a family, introducing their children to the world, teaching them to appreciate beauty and kindness and the value of hard work. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas and Kimberly returned to Maria, their first date restaurant. They sat at the same table, if possible, and ordered the same food. "You remember how nervous you were," Kimberly teased. "I was not nervous. You were adorable, trying so hard to be smooth." "I was smooth. You asked me what I was thinking and then looked like you might faint when I answered honestly." Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. "Best decision I ever made, being honest with you, not running when my mother set me up, staying for that first brunch. You almost didn't stay. I was this close to making an excuse and leaving." Lucas held his thumb and forefinger barely apart. "But then you smiled at my mother and something told me to give it a chance." "I'm glad you did. Me too." They clinked glasses and toasted to 10 years, to the life they'd built, to the unexpected beauty of being set up by an interfering mother at brunch. "Think our kids will forgive us if we do the same to them someday?" Kimberly asked. "Lily's only 7. We have time before we need to worry about that." "But when we do worry about it, we're totally doing it, right?" Lucas laughed. "Absolutely, it's only fair. Plus, it worked pretty well for us. It worked perfectly for us, and it had." From that first awkward setup to this moment, everything had unfolded exactly as it was meant to. Lucas had found not just love but partnership, not just a wife but his best friend, not just a family but a home in another person. He'd walked into that brunch expecting nothing and left with everything. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes love found you when you weren't looking, orchestrated by people who loved you enough to meddle. Sometimes the woman your mother chose really was perfect, even if you were too stubborn to see it at first. Lucas had been given an extraordinary gift that day, one he'd almost rejected out of pride and skepticism. He'd learned that being open to possibility, even unwanted possibility, could change everything. That sometimes the people who knew us best could see what we needed before we could. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, walking through the New York streets they both loved, Lucas pulled Kimberly close and kissed her temple. "Thank you for saying yes to that first dinner," he said. "Thank you for asking. Even though my mother forced us together. Especially because your mother forced us together. Sometimes fate needs a little help." They walked home through the city that had brought them together, past the park where Lucas had first told Kimberly he loved her, past the corner where they'd shared their first real kiss. Every street held a memory, every block a piece of their story, and it had all started with a setup at brunch, a meddling mother, and two people brave enough to see where an unexpected connection might lead. It had led them here to forever, to a love that surprised them both with its depth and certainty. To a family, a partnership, a life built on honesty and laughter and the willingness to be vulnerable with each other. Lucas Lancaster had walked into that restaurant, a billionaire who had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered. He'd walked out having met the woman who would teach him what it meant to be rich in the ways that counted. And every single day since then, he'd been grateful for interfering mothers, awkward brunches, and the courage it took to say yes to love, even when it came from the most unexpected places.